Welcome back, everyone. We've got two guests with us here today. We've got Daniel Harmon back, and we've got his brother Jeffrey Harmon with us today. Now, I'm really excited about this interview because the roots of where Harmon Brothers came from and everything that we've ever done goes back to when these guys were working at a company called Orabrush, and they pioneered some really cool stuff. At the time, I don't think anyone realized how impactful it would become, but it's kind of become the foundation of everything that we do at Harmon Brothers, and it's kind of impacted the whole advertising industry across the board. I wanted them to come on, and I want you to hear the story firsthand. Jeff, why don't we start with you? Tell us a story about how you even came to know Orabrush and get involved.
So I was in my last day of my last class at the Marriott School studying marketing. I was always sitting in the back of the class reading tech blogs about what we now consider Web 2. It was at the beginning of the Web 2 world. YouTube had just started taking off. It got acquired by Google. Facebook was brand new, still
limited.
Yeah, it was like 50 million people. That's kind of the era. This 75-year-old guy comes in to the class, and he has this group of 3 students that are studying his invention called Orabrush. And it's just a tongue cleaner, then it gets rid of bad breath. I was in the back of the class, and it caught my interest because they said, our research shows that less than 8% of people want to buy this kind of a product online. And so I was doing the math in my head, and I put my hand up and I was like, hey, 8% of people is still millions of people. Why don't you focus on the people online rather than going and trying to make a patent agreement or some type of an agreement with a large toothbrush company?
Which that was the opposite conclusion of what that group of students was making, right?
Yeah, they were making the argument that you should never take this online. It has to be in partnership with a Colgate.
Because only 8%.
Procter & Gamble. Yeah, because only 8%. Dr. Wagstaff, this Bob Wagstaff, he comes to me after the class and says, do you think you could work on my project? And I was like, yeah, I think I could sell it. And so I went and started working on it at nights after my work. I was working on a company called Family Link at the time that Facebook was doing these apps, and Family Link blew up to like 100 million users or something.
Some Paul Allen company,
yeah,
right?
Paul Allen, who founded Ancestry.com. And I was running this little Twitter team, is what we called. They called them the Twit Turns, because Twitter was new too at the time. At nights though, I would go and I started contacting like all these Facebook pages, one called Kisses. I tried to buy Kisses for like a few $1,000s. And I was playing with all kinds of stuff. And I would buy Google ads, and everything I did, it seemed like we would spend $3 to get $1 back in sales of Orabrush. And then I learned YouTube had launched an ad network just like a couple months before. And you could just go on like AdSense and buy these ads, placements on bid. And I found this video on YouTube from Howcast. I don't even know if Howcast still exists, but they had a tutorial on how to use a spoon to reach back, rub the back of your tongue, and then let it dry and smell it, and you can tell if your breath is actually bad. It works. Super legit, because you can't tell if you have bad breath by yourself. I put that on the page, and our conversions went up significantly. I don't remember the exact percentage, but they went up on the Google ad buys. And I said, what if we made a video where we have a spokesperson do the spoon trick, use the Orabrush, and then sell the Orabrush? So I grabbed one of the Twit Turns from Family Link, and we went to an old pool hall that had a white wall on it, and we shot for a couple hours, and I got my roommate, Joel Ackerman, who was a film major and now a director. He wrote up a script for me, and then we went in and shot this video. And we shot it, once again, old YouTube channel, iJustine. We shot it her style, which is white background, and you just jump cut. I didn't know anything about film. So I got my roommate, Devin Graham, who's now Devin Supertramp, a big YouTuber, asked him to come in and shoot it. So he shoots it, we put it together. A week later, we have a video, and it feels pretty good. And I stick it up on YouTube ads, come to find out, ads cost less than a penny a click because nobody's using YouTube ads. So there's like this golden moment where we could learn really, really cheap. And these were like banner ads.
Underpriced attention, right?
Underpriced attention. Nobody was interested. A few weeks later, we're buying a whole bunch, and we're actually like making money now on the Orabrush. Like a month or 2 later, YouTube has like a press announcement that their ad revenues have gone up by 5,000%. And it was just because we're lifting the floor because we figured something out.
To take it from nothing to something. Really?
Yeah, from like probably hundreds of dollars. We're lifting the entire floor of the YouTube ad network, and I start getting messages from YouTube people saying, can we talk to you? What they were really curious about is, this is a 2-minute ad, right? And I showed the ad to you and you were like, it's too long.
Yeah, I reacted like everyone else at the time. It was like, back then we were trained to be like, okay, you've got 30-second spots.
Or 15 seconds.
Or you have an infomercial that's 30 minutes long.
Yes.
And that was like right in between, and you had the foresight to ignore me and all the other naysayers.
Well, I was just thinking it's like a YouTube. I was like, if we create content that actually sells you at the same time, just create content that's as good as iJustine. iJustine was big, huge at the time. Create it at least as good as what she does. If it's as entertaining as her stuff, then it should keep people's attention as well as her stuff, but it'll actually sell you something. And so we just started running ads. I found out later from my friend at Google, who once she left, she said, we had to put a cap that no advertiser could buy more than 70% of our ad inventory because we were buying so much.
It was starting to annoy people on YouTube.
I
remember this.
Yeah, I got like 50 million
They're
views.
starting to get users like, why am I seeing oil brush everywhere?
Yeah, why am I seeing this tongue cleaner everywhere? But it blew up. We ended up getting venture capitalists talking to us, and YouTube sends out a group to ask us how they can cater to ad companies. Before they did this,
Yeah, they flew out from Palo Alto.
they flew off a whole team.
Here to Provo,
Yep.
Utah,
Yep.
just a few blocks up the street.
Spent 2 days with us.
In a little dungeon of a basement place that we were staying
Yeah,
in.
it's
Not basement place,
but it's grungy. If there was an
Yeah.
earthquake, that place is going
Yeah,
down.
the place is going down.
Daniel could explain. It's gross. The place is gross.
Yeah, I mean, it's just this place that no one wants to rent, which is why we were renting it, because it's really cheap at the time. And
But it's
yeah,
like
we
you
had
have to
this
step over homeless people when you leave.
there's a little bit of that. There was once almost a knife fight in our parking lot that one of our people, Nate, ended up breaking up between a couple of people that were likely under the influence of something. But yeah, they were there in that dingy little conference room with us, right?
Yes, and we had already built up a team. I stole Daniel from Chicago. He was working in an ad agency. Neil came in to build out the websites and build out the e-commerce system. And we built this, I mean, today it's relatively simple, but at the time we were just kind of like learning as we went. We had figured out that this 2-minute ad worked. At this point, this is our first entry into video, and we were doing like, I remember it was like $70,000 a month or something. It wasn't a significant amount of money, but we were like, we can actually make a living off this. Dr. Bob makes us offers. We come into Orabrush, become partners, founders of this company, this new company, Orabrush.
Prior to that, you were just kind of like a contract employee, but then he wanted to bring you in as a co-founder.
Yeah, prior to that, he paid me with a motorcycle.
Well, and I think it's really interesting to note that Dr. Bob was over 70 at this time.
Yes.
And willing to take the risks of making a startup.
Of a something year old, I was like 23, something like that, 24. Yeah, it's amazing that he was able to see that. And then they come out, they're talking about how can we make ads, because the inventory is just really limited when you're just doing like click at this sponsored video. They wanted to talk about how to do like pre-roll ads.
Where an ad runs at the beginning of other YouTube content.
Which got us really excited. And we said, well, why don't you just do a skippable ad? I think we were probably proposing like still do 15 seconds or whatever. I don't think the 5-second thing, that might have been.
They might have tested their way into that or something.
But make it skippable and just leave a skip button all the time on the ad and let us go for 2 minutes, for 5 minutes, for 20 minutes, whatever length works for us. If we can keep their attention and they don't skip, then we deserve the time.
I think it's important to note because we're 15 years later now and everyone's used to that format. But
Yes.
at this time,
It's just 30 or 15 second ads.
this was like a bonkers idea. Like, why would you do this?
Yeah, well, and they pushed back really hard. They said, we are never gonna give more than 30 seconds. Maybe we'll make it skippable before 30 seconds.
They liked the skippable idea.
Yes, but they did not like the unlimited idea.
The idea of how long the ad could be was really foreign to them.
Yes, and we were just making the argument, why do you care? If somebody's keeping someone's attention, that person deserves the attention. If it's an advertiser or a content creator, and you're gonna get paid based on whether or not they didn't skip. If I can keep people's attention for 5 minutes, and I convert it 500 or 1,000% higher than the competitors, then I'm gonna pay 500 or 1,000% more for that ad space than your competitors who are paying for 15-second ads.
That's right. And the viewer is the one who is in control the whole entire time.
The whole time.
They're
Other
not
than
being
the first 5
force-fed.
seconds. Yeah, the first 5 seconds.
That's right.
Yeah. And so they went and made it. And that was like game changer for us. Complete game changer.
And it wasn't just like they went and made it. It was like within months of that meeting, like less.
Yeah, probably 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
They put us in this like private beta program for it, and we were the very first advertiser to be using it.
You talked about it being a game changer, so I want to hear, how was it a game changer specifically for Orabrush, and then later we'll talk about how it was a game changer for the industry.
The entire industry. So for Orabrush, it just meant we could scale. We actually had more inventory than we could possibly buy.
Ad inventory.
Because of this feature.
There's billions of minutes being watched on YouTube, and now you have access to all of that.
Yeah. Anyway, so it was a game changer for that. It was a game changer for Orabrush. Took on investment, eventually got acquired.
It eventually reached nationwide distribution in Walmart and everywhere else,
Yeah,
right?
we started getting contacted by Walmart, by Boots in the UK, all kinds of places, and it built into this $10 million company for just a little plastic tongue cleaner that costs a few cents to manufacture. So we go to VidCon, and this is first or second year. Hank and John, I think it's the first year. First year. Hank and John Green invited us. Back then we would talk to them and text with them personally pretty regularly because we were their very first sponsors. And they like went out of their way. I think we paid like $10,000 to sponsor VidCon. We were like the headline sponsor. And for that $10,000, because Hank said, that's what put us into the black. They were in the red, and we were so grateful for Orabrush for sponsoring that we got them to actually deliver Orabrushes to every single hotel room of all the attendees and put them on their pillows.
And it got the ball rolling for them to pick up other sponsorships.
Yes, so
the brand was known on YouTube now, Orabrush, because of all the ads we'd been buying.
Yep.
And then when everybody was like, oh, Orabrush is in as a sponsor?
Yeah.
We'll come along.
A guy from Google, he's a sales rep for Google Ads, comes up to me, he's like, Jeff Harmon, can I give you a hug? And he just gives me this gigantic hug, and I'm like, who are you? And he's like, I work in Google Ads. I just met with Coca-Cola, and your story broke through. And he's like, I just want to thank you because you are saving my job.
Meanwhile, you're going, oh no, now my ad inventory is going to get more expensive.
Yeah, so that was fun. One other experience before we get off the Orabrush stuff is I get a phone call from a very close friend of mine, still a close friend, Meredith. She worked at Google at the time, and I think she's at Facebook right now, and she was our champion through this process.
Was she one of the ones that came? She was one of the group that came out and listened to that ad idea. Yep.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And Meredith goes, Jeff, I just talked to Eric. He was just in an interview with the New York Times.
As in Eric Schmidt, right?
Well, she didn't say. She didn't say at all. The New York Times wants to talk to you. I was like, sure. And I get on it with a New York Times reporter, talk for like 30 minutes about Orabrush, and I find out, I was like, who did you talk to? And she's like, oh, Eric Schmidt. I was interviewing with Eric Schmidt, and he brought you up and he brought up Old Spice. Those were the only 2 campaigns that had successfully done a YouTube thing at this point. And then she says, anything else you want to talk about? And I said, well, I think the story should be about Orabrush. To the New York Times reporter. And then I went and pitched to Orabrush, and she said, you know what? I think you're right. Let me go talk to the editor. And it ends up being the entire spread was about the Orabrush story of this 70-year-old inventor, which is also an interesting thing because we had a PR relations guy.
A PR agent.
Yeah, who was he was saying this story is totally worthy of the New York Times. And he was pitching all the time and trying to get these exclusives. And when you just do cool stuff,
the press comes to you.
The press comes to you, and then that's when the press relations person can like amplify that up. It's always press relations coming into a story, and they can amplify it and really get it to ramp up. But until that first wall is broken, it's really hard. He's got to do something cool.
You have a pretty good track record with doing cool things. We'll have a different interview where we cover more of that. For this one, I want you to talk about, let's go 2 directions with this. I'll have Daniel talk about the foundation that all of that laid for what Harmon Brothers has become and everything we've done since then. And then I'll have Jeff talk about how it's impacted the industry as a whole. You want to start, Daniel?
Yeah, you bet. So Jeffrey mentioned that the inspiration for the original Orabrush video of how to tell if you have bad breath came from YouTubers like iJustine.
And Howcast, right?
Yeah, and Howcast. And essentially, they were making content that was native to the YouTube platform, meaning they weren't making it the way that you would make it for TV or that you would make it for feature films or anything like that. They were just making it in this new format for YouTube. And in the book, Hitmakers, he talks in there about how the creators that win are the ones that make content that is native to the platform that they're on. So you see examples of that with YouTube, of people that have, essentially been born out of the YouTube content, like Hank and John Green back in the day, iJustine, Rhett and Link, Devin Supertramp. These are people that are making content that's native to the platform, and that's always kind of been the inspiration behind a lot of the ad formats that we've landed on that have been really successful, is making them so that they are sort of native to the platform rather than just saying like, oh, here's a really cool 30-second or 15-second TV commercial, and then let's just go ahead and upload it to YouTube. And a lot of people were doing that. They were using it as kind of the dumping ground of the stuff that they were already making with big ad agencies and stuff. And instead, we were very much approaching it from the standpoint of what was the problem to be solved and what was the experience of viewing on YouTube or on Facebook in those platforms, and we made the content very much native to the platform to where it felt much more like the stuff that they were already seeing there. Kind of like Jeffrey was saying, just figured, oh, if it's at least as entertaining and engaging as what iJustine is already doing, then people will opt into it rather than it having to be kind of forced on them. Like, and that's kind of what so much of the genius of the skip ad button was, that like you didn't even have to pay for it, right? If they skipped it,
yeah, YouTube decided to do that. We didn't suggest that.
Yes. They
said if they don't watch at least 30 seconds, you don't pay for the ad.
I think it's really important to go back in time, because a lot of the listeners might not even remember what life was like prior to that.
That is
where
true.
Advertising was very much a force-fed type industry. You think about those 5-minute commercial breaks that we all grew up suffering through.
Oh, just take a 17-year-old and stick them in front of like Dr. Phil on network TV and watch them
squirm
and just like lose interest because there's like 5 minutes of ads being force fed to them. Like they're out of the room so fast. Like
just check right out.
Yeah. If you watch one of them sit in front of broadcast TV for a few minutes, you will understand how different the worlds are.
Yeah, I've got a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old that pay for their own Spotify because they don't want anything to do with the ads. They're paying for that right now to listen to their music that way.
That switch from we're gonna force feed you whatever crap we feel like and you're a captive audience and so you're just gonna deal with it, to totally shifting the balance of power over to the viewer to say, I can watch what I wanna watch and I can skip what I wanna skip. And that forces us as advertisers to think and act fundamentally different than what it had always been in the past.
It was painful at the beginning for a lot of advertisers. For us, it was an opportunity, but for most advertisers, it's like this painful
We
shift.
very much viewed it as an opportunity. It was all about, oh man, we know we can make stuff that's entertaining enough to hook people in and gets them to watch all the way through. And that's a little bit, I mean, we talk in terms of a hook for our ads, something that really grabs people in. And when you have 5 seconds to work with there, which is now, 2 or 3 seconds on Facebook as people scroll through, but then we really had to think about how to make that first 5 seconds super interesting.
And if you go back to our original ads, they're not interesting anymore. You go back and watch the original Orabrush ad, which had tons of people loved it and thought it was a big deal. It's not that funny. All humor is kind of like
relative to
its time.
Yep.
But we just were better than the stuff out of the time, so we were winning the game. Another thing is this realization that we have to shoot super tight. All YouTubers would be like this. And if you asked a filmmaker to come in, they'd be like,
it's gotta be wide.
It's gotta be wide. I need to show
Uh-huh.
this. I need to frame it out just the way I'm taught for a theater screen. But we're looking at little phone screens, which means the eyes have to be like really big and to see their mouth expressions and facial expressions. So we were shooting commercials that were uncomfortably tight for the time period.
Every director of photography or the person that was in charge of the cinematography of the ad, we were always pushing them. No, go tighter. Go tighter. No, you gotta crop in more.
Get them as tight as you could on
It would drive them crazy.
And then in the editing, we'd be like, crop it in. You didn't go tight enough.
Yes. We lost a lot of resolution back in those days by cropping in so much.
That's just because we were making up for DPs that were trained in film school.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward to today. Daniel, you are now the creator of the Tuttle Twins show, doing a whole entire TV series. Jeff is the chief content officer at Angel Studios, which is pioneering an entire new form of studio to compete with the incumbent Hollywood studios. I want to hear from each of you how that moment, that skip ad moment, laid the foundation for the work that you're doing today, 15 years after that.
TV or movie making was not even on my radar until my 20s. Because we grew up in Idaho on a farm, 3 TV stations. You could get a 4th one if you like put a hanger on the antenna and hung it up.
Tin foil or
Yeah, and hung it up from the curtains. And then you could get PBS, old tube style TV where, you know, if you break them, they explode. Those kind of TVs.
I don't think a lot of people broke TVs and know that they explode, but they do.
People in Idaho.
People in Idaho know that.
Especially when your neighbors are giving, because they're poor, they're giving you their old stuff.
use it till it breaks and then shoot it.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Use it till it breaks and then throw it out of the treehouse.
On the back of a pickup truck.
Or yeah, there's lots of different ways to break TVs. And they do explode, and like smoke comes out of dust comes out of the inside. But yeah, it wasn't even on the radar until almost all my roommates were in film. And so there's like this slow progression of getting in the film world. And Daniel, growing up, had like a photographic memory for ads. So I think he was always interested in ads. He went into that industry.
And for quoting movies.
Yeah, both movies and ads. I like
to
memorize them.
But when you're watching in the olden days, you couldn't the only way you could rewind and watch is get a cassette tape, record it, which we didn't have the option of doing. So he would just get to watch them like once or twice during the little bit of TV time we had. And so he would like commit them to memory.
And then he became your recorder.
Yes, yeah, and he would quote them while we're out working on the farm or whatever. The funny ones. He liked the funny ones.
Yeah.
There was that element. It was reading the book Creativity Inc. that there was
Pixar story, right?
Pixar story. That there was this moment where I was like, they were an ad agency. And we had created an ad agency.
Pixar.
Yeah.
Pixar specifically was an ad.
Yes.
They were doing ads.
They were doing ads.
Yeah, you can go YouTube,
Yep.
Pixar ads, and there's whole playlists of
And after
ads they did.
Orabrush, it was our first one. Brought in a VP from Procter & Gamble. He came in, became the CEO. It took a different direction. We didn't grow up with that company. We moved on, started an ad agency, Harmon Brothers, did Poopery, Squatty Potty, Purple, Lumi, us as brothers, we all left. And then eventually, I think most of that, like all the people we really wanted from that team, from the Orabrush team, came over with us. And we just were able to build on the blocks that we had set up before and learn a little bit more and a little bit more. And then there was this reading Creativity Inc. It was like, oh, they were an ad company too, and they moved into content. And I love watching movies. I mean, the first movie I watched, I think I was 8 years old, watched Aladdin in theaters. And I just remember that opening scene where down in the
Cave of Wonders.
The Cave of Wonders, and that whole scene, and just being like,
Drew you in.
yeah, it was amazing. It was this magical experience.
They had a bunch of 3D work in there and stuff.
Yeah, go work on farms, because we would work pretty young and just dream about that movie for weeks. And then Lion King was like even a step up from that. We watched them in the Dollar Show months after they had come out, but they were new to us. I think we watched them on Tuesday night in the Dollar Theater.
It's like discount night.
25 cents.
Yeah.
Not quite.
But it's a discount off the dollar. Those moments, I think we all had this strong affinity for movies. We love movies, but it was reading that book that made me go, oh, could we become that? Like just kind of like planted the seed. And we had been doing long form ads, which means we have to tell stories and it's good content. And we have been told so many times in the comments by people reaching out to us, investors saying, why don't you guys turn these into TV series? Or why don't you, we even did a YouTube series. Daniel led the YouTube series, Diary of a Dirty Tongue.
That was still back at Orabrush.
Yeah, and he did that with Joel and Dave Ackerman, and he led that at Orabrush, where we built this YouTube series back in, was it 2010?
Yeah, we were doing a video a week for 2 years straight.
For 2 years straight, and we did it on a shoestring budget. I mean, we set up Morgan the Orabrush Tongue's apartment, which you can go look up his stuff, at least all the ones that weren't deleted by the acquiring company that thought they were probably not woke enough or something.
They definitely weren't woke.
Yeah. But this giant human tongue is running his own vlog, and that got hundreds of thousands of subscribers. I mean, it was the very first brand played YouTube vlog, and probably one of the most successful ever. And Daniel and Joel and Dave Ackerman did that one. And so we're just slowly like entering into this new space of content that's long form. And then eventually Neil comes to me, who's our older brother, and he says, Jeff, we should make this filtering company. It's now called VidAngel. And he said, if we do filtering, there's a whole bunch of people. We'd been reading Clayton Christensen's The Innovator's Dilemma, and that you serve unserved marketing scenes. Like all the people who want filtering, which is where you take out like sex scenes or rape scenes out of Game of Thrones or beheading scenes or nudity or any,
whatever the viewer doesn't want.
Whatever the viewer doesn't want, it's like a high-tech remote. It just skips stuff. And he said, there's a whole bunch of people that want this. We can create an audience big enough to become a distributor, and we create our own content. And I was like, all right, let's do that. You know. And so that's the beginning of it. What's now Angel Studios, and running one of the top 5 TV, what I think will eventually be the #1 TV series in the world, The Chosen.
One of the things that I find so fascinating about your approach at Angel Studios is that it puts the viewer in the driver's seat. The viewer is in control.
Yep.
And I feel like those roots tie all the way back to everything we just talked about with that skip button.
That's really interesting because, yeah, the whole idea here is that we feel like the relationship between the creators and the viewers in Hollywood is almost abusive. The creator just creates whatever they want, and they say, I mean, now I've talked to executives from high-end at Fox and Warner Brothers, and we're now rubbing shoulders with the top executives, and we talk to people who've been in their writers' rooms and stuff, and they say the mentality in Hollywood is we dictate what middle America watches. We're going to dictate to them what they watch because we're the people who know. We're the refined, we're the elite. And Angel Studios is named Angel because it's the angels that go and fund the content, and they have control.
That mentality sounds incredibly similar to the advertisers of 20 years ago, right?
Yes.
We decide.
Yes. Well, it's really interesting the way you're connecting the dots, because I don't think I've connected them in that articulate of a way. It's intuition. You're figuring out how to connect that. It's all the same principles. Viewer has control.
Jeffrey mentioned that we had done The Diary of a Dirty Tongue, which was a series of over 100 videos over the course of 2 years. So I learned the craft of filmmaking just by doing it every single week. When we started Harmon Brothers, and did Poopery, and Squatty Potty, and Purple, and Chatbooks, and Fiberfix, and all these different ads, we kept seeing come up again in the comments, people saying things like, this character would be great in a TV show, or like, this is better than half the content I watch, and those kinds of things kept coming up about like how entertained they were. Yeah, I could watch this character for hours.
Poopery was replacing dinner table conversations about TV series, about the latest soap opera.
Yeah.
They would talk about Poopery, or Squatty Potty, or Purple instead, or Chatbooks. That was a dinner table conversation, and there's this moment where you realize, oh, we're good at this.
Yeah, it was like, oh, we can actually create content that people actually enjoy watching. We didn't set out, or at least in my mind, I wasn't setting out to make a TV show. I wasn't setting out to make feature films or anything like that. But over time, like Jeffrey said, after reading the book Creativity Inc., we started realizing we were actually following a lot of the processes that Pixar followed in order to create good content. The way that we would use collective brain around us, right, of the best opinions of different directors of photography or directors or writers or just different people, and to get feedback on our content and make sure that we were making things clear, that they were funny in the way that needed to be funny. And over time, we started to believe, oh, we could do this as a TV show or as a feature someday. That bug started to be planted in my head at that point. And so when...
Did it eventually start to become an itch?
Yeah, it started to become an itch that I wanted to scratch. Within the agency, we had trained up a lot of different creative directors and directors and things to be able to make the ads themselves, and got the agency to a point where I didn't have to be making all, the content. I wasn't the creative director on each project. I wasn't the director on each thing, where the workload was spread across a much larger group at that point, and getting a lot more really smart brains involved. Along comes this book series written by Connor Boyack that I love. I bought the first copy of and read it to my kids, that teaches kids about the principles of freedom and economics. And I'd never seen anything like this. It was something I had always wanted for my kids, and I bought the first copy, and then he started to make it into a series after the success of the first one. And I bought every copy after that. The book series starts to have so much success and is selling in the hundreds of thousands of copies, to the point where Connor says, I want to make this into a TV series, right? I want to make this into an animated series. That's when I think Jeffrey started to kind of kick around the idea of like, I think our team would be good for that. And I was a little bit resistant to it at first, of like, oh, if I'm going to get into TV and features, I don't want it to be this one as the first one. I was just a little bit like, oh, I don't know about that. But then after I sat with it for a while, I was like, well, why not? Why not? Like, this is something I'm passionate about. I love freedom. I love economics. I love being able to teach my kids this stuff. We could take this really great foundation that Connor and Elijah Stanfield have created, and Elijah Stanfield being the illustrator, and we could build on it and create an even bigger universe with a TV series of characters that are just really funny and people can fall in love with, and that it can do kind of like our ads have been doing for all this time, where they're entertaining and teaching at the same time. And so it was actually after several conversations with you of sitting down of like, oh, I kind of wrapped my head around it and really started to get passionate about the idea. And we approached Connor of like, hey,
what better team than us?
Yeah, why don't we do this TV series for you? And
yeah, Connor was our client
Yeah.
at that point. We were helping him with his marketing, and we helped him grow the sales of the book series. And so we had built a lot of trust that way. And plus, Connor has a long-standing relationship with Jeffrey, and they go way back. And so the relationship was there, and so we were able to make that strong argument of what better team than ours
Yeah.
to tackle this.
we mutually appreciated and respected each other's work, and it made it so it's like, okay, let's do this thing together. And Connor's the co-executive producer on the project, and he helps ensure that the teaching is coming through with the integrity it needs to and with the clarity that it needs to. And so he's a fantastic team member with that. And it's so interesting that Tuttle Twins exists because of this sort of crowdfunding type concept that Angel stumbled onto back when VidAngel was in its struggling days. VidAngel raised a whole bunch of money from crowdfunding. It was, what was it, like $10 million or something along those lines?
Yes, $10 million in 5 days.
Yeah, over the course of 5 days, $10 million raised in crowdfunding. And I remember watching that and my eyes just being opened up. And I sent an email to Neil and Jeffrey. I said, if you could do this for a company, why couldn't you do this for like a show? And then later on, fast forward, they end up doing
This
it
is
for
2016.
Yeah, this is 2016.
What we didn't realize that it would eventually be branded Web3, this concept.
Yeah, essentially, yeah, we were doing some Web3 stuff
It's just ownership.
back then. Yeah,
Let's
but
give everybody the ownership in the shows.
give your audience ownership. Eventually, that was applied to The Chosen, which was an enormous success. And then later on, we did it with Tuttle Twins, where we were able to raise $3.7 million from the crowd. That we had the first season funded because of that concept. Anyway, yeah, I guess that's kind of the path through. And people have been receiving the series very much with hunger and open arms. And parents are just like, I've been wanting something like this my whole life. Because it's essentially that's what I'm doing. I'm making this series that I wanted as a kid and that I want for my kids.
And I think, just to put a bow on that thought, not only was it crowd-funded and made possible by the crowd, but the approach you've taken in the creative process, you're involving the crowd throughout the creative process, where everything from concepting to scripting, it gets in front of an audience long before it hits final animation.
Yeah, we have this whole process where we take a storybook form of the script and let our audience read it and then fill out a survey and give feedback. And we take character designs and we give them a 1, 2, or 3 option and say, which one do you guys like the most? And we don't always go with exactly what they choose, but it informs it. But the data helps us make decisions for sure. And that feedback loop is so valuable as a creator, even if you don't always go with it. Just knowing where your audience is at, because your gut might be right and it might be a really good starting point, but it also can be made better by catering to your audience.
Guys, this has been a fun conversation. Thank you for listening. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you on the next one.